Hello, everyone, and welcome to the introduction of the Open Voice Interoperability Sandbox. Today's webinar is going to feature our new implementation of the Open Voice Interoperability standards, and I think you'll be very excited and interested to see how far we've come with implementations. Let's go to the next slide. This is a Linux Foundation meeting. It's subject to the guidelines of the Linux Foundation antitrust policy. It'll begin and end on time, and it's being recorded. Let's go to the next slide. So the Open Voice Interoperability Initiative is a project of the LFAI and Data Foundation. It's an extension and continuation of the work of the Open Voice Network. Our goal is to enable independent conversational assistants that are based on any platform to collaborate to solve problems for users based on standard specifications for assistant communication. It's very simple. The assistants are out in the world doing whatever it is that they do, and our standards enable them to communicate with each other. So far, we have developed two standard specifications for dialogue events, the linguistic utterances that systems and users exchange, and the conversational envelope, which is the messaging protocol overall that communicates between assistants. Of course, the specifications by themselves are rather abstract. So we thought that it would be very important to have some really concrete working realizations of the standards. So we began developing Sandbox implementation, which we're going to be talking about today. So we can go to the next slide. The Sandbox is basically some code that allows developers to get started with the specifications. It's open source, Python and JavaScript. It's in our GitHub repositories. We'll tell you where those are a little bit later. Today, we're going to introduce the Sandbox, tell you what it can do, show you some examples. We have so far two initial third-party implementations developed by completely separate organizations that have been integrated with the Sandbox. They're from two companies called xCali and Man-Made Web. Today, we'll be hearing about the xCali implementation. So let's look at our agenda today. Next slide. We have our two Sandbox implementers, Emmett Coyne and Leah Barnes, who will be talking about the Sandbox and demonstrating it. And then Diego Gatzmar is going to be talking about his third-party example of using the Sandbox with an external assistant, which is a smart library. Emmett's going to talk about the nitty-gritty logistics of how to use the Sandbox and where to find the documentation. We'll have some time for Q&A. So as we go through the webinar and you hear the presentations, please put any questions and comments that you have in the chat, and then we'll address them in the Q&A session at the end. So with that, let's move to Emmett and let's hear about the Sandbox.
Thank you, Debbie. The Sandbox, I thought we should probably first talk about some of the concepts that are behind the Sandbox. The idea of an assistant, a voice-based natural language assistant that does specific things like schedule a meeting or provide weather information. That's an assistant. Interoperability. That's the concept of multiple assistants working together to solve a problem. For instance, you might have a scheduling issue and a communication issue, how to communicate with someone about times for a schedule. There needs to be a way for assistants to communicate, to share, and work as a team. Standards are an important, crucial role in this. That's what we're about here. That's how this thing works. We need to have the same computer protocol, certainly the same textual messages, and in some way the transmission and reception of those messages. Web-like is an important concept. It's a common formalism that everyone's familiar with, cooperating across and between assistants, much like you might use the websites and go from a link in one website to another website and then back again. That's the idea you should think about here. And why the sandbox? Well, we thought, as Debbie said, it's a way to actually implement some of our ideas in, albeit a non-production quality, but in a very usable and truly functional way. It's a tool to experiment and test all this using actual standards. So next slide. When you do fire up the sandbox, this is the first thing you'll see on the main page, and this is a diagram of all the pieces, parts that make it happen. So why don't we dive into that? Next slide. Okay, it all really starts with something called the launch server, and that is a simple server that comes along with the sandbox. It's a Python server. You run it, and it manages things like you would expect: HTML pages, images, JavaScript files that are used, and it all operates through the web messages connection. It also manages some other files. Remember, this is all served from a root directory that you will download from the repository. So it will also read and write files to that directory for logs and diagrams. We'll get into that later and see what those are. So next slide. The way this interacts with the human being is through a standard browser. It's basically, it handles HTML and JavaScript, as I said. It has to have some other features if you're going to use speech. So there are speech technologies, and we'll get into that a little bit in the next slide, but it uses displays, clicks. It's a standard web page. It also uses some high-level graphics like SVG for diagramming, for some of the analytics that Leo will talk about later and show you. Next slide. The WebKit speech is a free, open system that allows browsers to use speech technologies. Many browsers today can do TTS and make their web page speak. Only several of them can do a good job of recognition, and we have focused on those two, the Edge and the Chrome, which both work in Mac world and in Windows world. So this is a fairly generic platform that will run either place. This is very good performance. The recognition is excellent, and some of the voices are absolutely professional grade kind of TTS voices. So that's useful for making good demonstrations. Next slide, Nathan. Okay, now this is how all the stuff communicates. We have to remember that, first of all, let's remember this is what we're selling. If this is the commercial, this red box, this is what we're selling here, the standards of communication that make all this happen. The rest of the stuff is to help you demonstrate it, for you to look at it, to test it, and experiment with it. But the messages, that's the product here. It all goes back and forth, as Debbie said, in envelopes. The Exchange also contains specific things, dialogue events that Debbie also mentioned, of utterances and things like invites we'll talk about. The human and the assistant both send their utterances to be spoken to each other. They're converted to text from the human and sent as text. The assistant sends text and it's rendered through the TTS. The communication includes important things like the participant IDs. It has a URL, and we'll see that when we look at the assistants later in a demo. The conversation ID, that's important now, because you're not just talking to one assistant, you might be going from one to another. And so there's a whole conversation that has a cohesiveness, and that's important. We're also right now working on context and history, which will be brought into the sandbox at some point. The idea of maintaining the context of what the overall conversation is about and what the goal is for the conversation. So I think the next slide, is this where we're going to do the demo? Next slide, please. No, that's right. I'm the demo. So you have to release and I will share my screen. Okay. This out of the way. Move this over here. Share my screen. I'll share this one. Okay. Interesting. I don't, correct me, do you see it?
We do.
Okay, I normally has a bar around it. I didn't see the bar. Okay. This is the a little demo of the sandbox and how it's going to work. The directory, when you download, you'll have a main directory here and you will start some servers. I've already started them here. This is the basic server that runs the whole sandbox. This is one of the assistants. Don't need to worry about that right now, but in the Edge browser, I've loaded this server and address, and that's what'll happen. You'll now see the sandbox. And let me get my pictures out of the way. Okay. This is that image we saw before. And just to remind you of all the pieces, parts, and then I've put my name in. In the future, assistants will be able to use this to talk back to you and say, you know, hello, Emmett, things like that. But just the good stuff happens once you start it. You'll notice a few things about this. It tells you the browser you're using and the operating system. There are differences in how the speech technologies are implemented, and so it's worth knowing where you are and where your tests are being done. Basically, what we've got here is the startup, a settings page where you can set various things. Let me go to that and show you the settings page. This is your name that you could send. There is an important one. A lot of the function, some of the functionality is operated using a large language model, and this is the key for OpenAI for some of the demo that we'll do. You'll see it used. If you put your key in, it will then use your key. It never transmits it anywhere except to OpenAI. And if you're worried about using a lot of cache, I developed this thing, and every month I hit it a lot, and I think I've gotten to 18 cents worth of usage. So don't worry about that. Now let's take a look. We've got assistants here. Multiple, as Debbie said, there are multiple assistants. She mentioned man-made web, and they actually developed a thing called the Wizard, which is a large language model one. But let's start out with a simple one. Basic SAM. I started up this server, which is running locally, and Basic SAM is just pretty dumb. It just says hello. Here's some of the features of SAM settings, the assistant's name and ID. This is a voice index that it's going to use to render its text response. These colors are used, you'll see them later in diagrams and things, and they help. You can see them more clearly with the different colors. This is the address that the server that you go to. So basically, all you need to do what's mandatory right now is you need to have a voice and you need to have an address. So that's that. Let's go and see what happens. We're going to send an event that's called a bear invite, and that will go to Sam.
Thanks for the invitation. I am ready to assist.
So what happened was, when I initiated the conversation, we sent this, which is the envelope. Let me make it a little bigger, actually. There we go. This envelope has a conversation ID. It has things for the schema that will be there, who sent it, me, response codes, sort of like you'd get in a web page, did everything go okay? Yeah. An event was sent, and it was an invite being sent to Sam's URL. What Sam did when Sam got it was built another envelope, and it kept the same conversation ID and all the things. This is who sent it. This is Sam's address. It sent back an utterance, and it has its ID. Pretty simple-minded. It's just an assistant. You can set that to whatever you like. The important thing is when you get down to in this dialogue event, that's an utterance, you have features which are text, and here is what Sam said. I'm ready to assist. Thank you. So from then on, you can continue to talk with Sam, and he's not very smart, but let's see. What's the weather?
I'm not sure how to respond.
So how it works, and these packages are going back and forth. Let's see if we can go back to the page again and take a look at something that's a little more adventurous, something that is out in the web. We did not build the wizard. Man-made web did. Alan developed this based on a large language model. It answers pretty much any question. You can see here's out in the web. That's where this assistant lives. If we contact it.
This is the wizard agent. Ask me anything.
So we sent the standard stuff again, conversation ID. This is where it went to in the envelope. And the wizard came back with an utterance, which we heard her say, this is the wizard agent, ask me anything. And also sent back a whisper, where there are ways that you can send additional information that's not necessarily spoken, but might be useful for another assistant to understand how to do various things. So it gives a little bit of a help there. There are other things it could do in the future. So I can ask it, how many legs do a spider have? 2.
Spiders have 8 legs.
So it is a general purpose large language model. You can talk to it all day long if you want. Let's see, we would go back to the home page again. We could do, as I said, the discovery. If you have your large language model loaded, this will work just fine for you. The discovery just listens. It's going to help us with discovery in the future. How do you find out what kind of assistant you want in the future? It doesn't say anything right now, but if I sent it this invite to start, and I could say, I want to know about frogs.
What specifically about frogs are you interested in? Are you looking for information about their habitat, behavior, or perhaps their biology and anatomy?
I want to know about frog legs.
Ah, I see. Are you interested in frog legs as a culinary topic? Or are you more interested in the anatomy and physiology of frog legs from a biological perspective?
I want to know how to cook frog legs.
Understood. It sounds like you're interested in the culinary aspect of frog legs. So, the domain expertise you're looking for is culinary, with a subdomain of cooking techniques.
So now if I confirm that, yes, that's right.
Great. Here's the JSON for our discovery.
So this can now send back an utterance to say something. Here's the JSON for our discovery, but it can also send back a whisper here that has a JSON sub-element that has the domain of culinary and subdomain of cooking techniques. Now that's great, a lot of text stuff here. It'd be interesting to see what we can do with logs and sequence diagrams. And I think for that, I would like to hand it off to Leah. Let me unshare my screen and have her show you what we've done on that front.
Okay. I'm gonna just share my screen really quickly. Okay, so I'm gonna start with the logs page, and I do have a conversation previously loaded on here, but if Emmett were to hit the logs button, this is the page that would come up. And this is just an easy way for anybody to really understand what's going on. It's broken up very nicely to be able to see every single element of the envelope. And as you can see, sent message, received message, everything's there. All the event types are there as well, which is awesome. A cool feature is you can save these dialogues directly to this folder right here, which is in the repository that you will download. And it saves, and here's the conversation that I just saved. But let's, for an example, I already had one saved as well. So this is also a conversation that I had, and I can just quickly expand to see all the different messages that were sent and received. And we have some filters up here to just see the sent messages. These are all the ones that I sent. You can play around with this a little bit. You can see all the received messages, and these are the colors that you actually get to pick on the initial page that Emmett showed as well. And this feature, full dialogue, is just the bare minimum of the message, so you can just see the text that was sent rather than the entire envelope. Just helpful little things for developers and users to understand exactly what's going on. And if we move to the sequence diagram page, this is basically like the in of what exactly is going on between each message. So like the human will send a bare invite, and it goes to the browser, and then it goes to the assistant. And then the assistant will send an utterance back saying, hello, how can I assist you today? And all of these, all the arrows have hover events on them, so you can see exactly what's going on. This is from the browser. This is the message that's being sent, or it's being synthesized. It's a very helpful tool just to see exactly what's going on and where your messages are going. And you can also see when you hover over the assistant browser or your assistant, you can see all the things that Emmett also showed on that first page, like their service address, their name, their voice index. And another thing you can do is save this diagram. It's saved in report under sequence. You'll see when Emmett shows the GitHub after, and it's saved, and there it is. And if I were to click on the one that was already saved, it changes the color, which is nice, and then it brings up the message that I previously saved, and then we keep a little like diary section of the JSONs that you save, or the JSONs that you select, sorry, just so it's easier for you to know which ones you're selecting. But yeah, those are the pages that really help with understanding what's going on behind the scenes. But yeah, that's it for me. I think we're going back to the PowerPoint, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think this is on me. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so what I'm talking right now is a little bit about a third-party integration. What we've been developing is what we call a small library agent. It's a specialized AI agent providing information about books, authors, and so on and so forth. So here the idea is that you can have any kind of primary agent or first level agent, and this agent is able to delegate or mediate, or generally speaking, it can route any conversation related to book information, to this smart library assistant. And of course, the assistant has been built looking at the OWN specification, looking at the interoperability JSON standard or universal API specification mentioned by Emmet and Debbie before. Next slide, please, Nathan. So this is an example of request. In this case, we are going to send any request, including an utterance. So we are going to ask some information about the book, and then in the whisper, we can send additional information, additional request. And we are supposed, of course, to get back some kind of answer. Next slide, please. Yeah, and of course, the smart library is part of the Sandbox. So if you download the Sandbox, you install that, you launch the Python script, you will be able to try the smart library as well. This is an example of a diagram. Next one, please. I think I can also now play with some demos. So I will try to share my screen. I think, Nathan, you need to, yeah. Okay, so let's share the screen and the sound. Okay, good. So I was mentioning the library assistant is available here. Whenever you select that, you can interact with the library like here. You can, of course, get a response back, look at the OWN JSON, and and then I want to move this, and the sequence diagram display is there. What I want to show now is an example, not just by using messaging, but instead by using voice applications. And I'm doing that with a third-party integration. In this case, the vendor is Xcolly, mentioned before. This is the Xcolly visual IVR. It's an interactive voice responder drag and drop module. And what it's going to do, this is respond to any request vocally, and if you select one, it is going to delegate to the wizard agent, in this case, the Sandbox wizard agent. If I press 2, it's going to route to the smart library, and 3 is going to use some retrieval augmented generation process to retrieve information for a specific data source. In this case, it's about an order information. So what I'm going to do now in the demo, I'm going to play with that a little bit. I'm going to select the smart library. I will ask some information, and then I will also try to ask something with it, which is not related to books. And finally, I'm going to try the order as well, okay? So let's have a try.
Welcome to the Xcolly Open Voice Interoperable Agent. Please press 1 if you want to talk with the wizard, 2 if you like to talk with the smart library, or 3 in case you like to ask for specific order information. Let me connect you with the smart library assistant.
Please wait. Delegation ongoing.
Hi, I'm the Smart Library Service. I can look up information about books and many other things. What do you want to know?
Tell me about the first edition of Harry Potter, please.
Please wait.
Yeah, and those are the logs that you can see. Hopefully, I sent the JSON Universal API request according to
The first edition of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, which is the first book in J.K. Rowling's immensely successful Harry Potter series, was initially published in the United Kingdom on June 26, 1997 by Bloomsbury. In the United States, the book was released with the title Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone and was published by Scholastic Corporation on September 1, 1998, and in the British first edition of Harry Potter and...
Please press 1 if you have any more questions.
Hi, I'm the Smart Library Service. I can look up information about books and many other things. What do you want to know?
Where I can order a good pizza in Chicago.
Please wait.
So in this case, the question is no sense for the library. So it's going to answer like that.
I am here to provide information about books and authors for food-related questions like where to order a pizza in Chicago. I recommend checking local food guides, review websites, or food delivery apps where you can find recommendations and customer reviews for the best pizza places in Chicago. If you have any book or author-related inquiries, feel free to ask.
Please press 1 if you have any more question.
Welcome to the Xcally Open Voice Let me connect you with the Order Management Assistant.
Please wait. Delegation ongoing.
Welcome to the Order Assistant. Ask me anything about the Acme Limited order, please.
What's the unit price of the car batteries, model E5?
Please wait.
The unit price of the car batteries, model E5, is $80. Please press 1 if you have any more question. Press 2 to return to the main menu, or just...
Welcome to the Order Assistant. Ask me anything about the Acme Limited order, please.
What's the shipment address?
Please wait.
The shipment address for order number Acme 2024-005, dated January 5, 2024, is as follows: Acme Limited Warehouse 789 Storage Lane, Tech City. Please note that the delivery is expected by January 20, 2024. If you have any further queries regarding this order, you may contact John Doe, the procurement manager, at phone number 555-1234 or email johndoe@acmelt.com. Please press 1 if you have any more question.
Okay, so that's a real demo about how to use the specification, the own specification. In this case, it was a visual IVR. You can actually do that with any kind of voice IVR able to interact with standard API JSON based, and you can have some fun with that. So that's all. Thank you very much. I'm going now to hand over back to Emmet.
In here, I will share my screen. This one. Okay, you've seen all the cool things that you can do with the Sandbox, and it has been made public, I believe Debbie said, as of today. So you can just go to the Open Voice Interoperability, Open Voice Sandbox, and no, I didn't want to do that. And that will take you to this page, and you'll see everything we've got. There's a fairly good README that tells you how to get started. A few basic simple things you'll need for the Python. If you don't have Python, loaded on your machine from python.org. If you're going to build an assistant, you need to do these steps with cores. But other than that, this explains how it all works, a lot of the stuff that we just went on and on about. So that's good. The structure is, this is all, the biz stuff. The actual version here is this directory. And this is the directory that is managed by the local Python server. And in fact, the Python server is here. And when I said it was simple and basic, it is pretty simple and basic. It's a couple of pages long that supports our special stuff for saving log files, but it's basically just an HTML server. The other directories that are here under the Sandbox are, we mentioned reports, Leah mentioned those, and logs and sequences go there. The assistant servers, let's see, there are all of the things like the scripts. You might find this interesting to see how all of this is done. It's fairly well organized. There is, I don't know if we pushed, oh yes, under docs, there's a description for all of the things of what they do, but you might find that very interesting implementation wise. The browsers, that's just the web HTML pages, not so exciting. There's an FAQ page we've started. You definitely want to go there and look at a few things. the assistant servers, if you're going to build some to play with, this is probably, if you're a developer, this is where you'll want to land. The local SAM server, for instance, we went there. It has a FAQ type file, but it has a few things like the actual server. You can cut and paste this. It is very short. This is what runs, and it uses, in this case, Leah wrote this, and she created this function that does a generate response. It takes an input OVON, it does whatever it does, and it sends back an OVON thing. This is her file. If we go back up here and we look at it, it does, you feel free to look through it. It does some simple things like looking for hi, hello, and good morning. And then it just builds the components it needs. And at the very bottom, it returns the JSON. So you can feel free to copy these, that's what they're for, and put anything you want in for a test assistant if you want. Let's see. I don't know if there's too much more we need to get into. We've provided a lot of simple things. If you want to start up SAM on a Windows, you click on the bat file. If you want to start it up on a Mac, you just click on the command file. You don't have to worry about all the rigmarole of command windows and things. It'll just fire them up. We've tried to make everything as simple as possible like this. There are in the internal server, if you want to take a look at this one has the mechanism that we use to attach to and use the OpenAI large language model. So that will be interesting. If you take a look inside this, it should be fairly obvious to anyone who's a JavaScript developer. We've kept it all very simple, very short, and I think that's about all you really need to know. We'll have the links at the back of at the end of the webinar, so where you can find this. But it's GitHub Open Voice Interoperability, Open Voice Sandbox. Then you're home free. So I guess I'll pass it back to you now.
Okay, so yeah, let's open it up and see what kind of questions people have. I see that some of them there's some questions in the chat.
There's one from Debbie from Alessandro Spallina, just asking for clarification on the difference between OpenAI API, which are paid, in which case there is no free API, and ChatGPT Pro subscription is meant to be used only via their GUI versus what we're doing.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good question. In general, there's that question, and there's a whole general question of what's the relationship between what we're doing here and large language models. And perhaps Emmett or Diego can comment on that.
Well, a quick note, the reason that OpenAI was used is that we figured pretty much everyone knew what it was and how it works, and we all had keys. We are actively looking at there are many other large language models that are out there that are free and open. I believe Diego uses one of those. So Diego?
Yeah, I guess it's important to highlight the fact that the Sandbox is independent from the large language model. Of course, in this example, I might show you the OpenAI, but for example, the Smart Library uses some Hugging Face, Open LLM. But in principle, you can build your own AI agents and add that also to the Sandbox if you want, by using any kind of LLM that you like, okay?
And another question here from Michael Novak. Able to search on log file content now, or is that a future feature?
Well, what do you want to search for? Why don't you join the group and give us some suggestions? We certainly can search on it.
No, anything, it's just a web page, right? You can just like
Yeah,
searching
well,
on any
we're
web
definitely
page.
gonna add more like filter features on it. Right now it's just being able to see the sent and received, but I'm sure we could put a little bar in there to be able to search, different contexts in different conversations.
Yeah, I mean, you might want to search for windows of time. You might want to search for what agents are talking, and
Mhm.
all of those things are doable. Just which
Mhm.
ones are the most important? Let us know.
And then another question, actually, it turned into a bit of a dialogue in chat between Andrew, Francis, and Diego. I think it's a good question. Andrew is asking us specifically about discovery. The initial question was, why didn't the smart library hand the pizza order in the demo, hand the pizza order over to a pizza ordering program, or did I miss something? And then Diego pointed out that the smart library is in fact an AI agent specializing in information about books. And Andrew responded, wouldn't discovery kick in? How does discovery factor in? Emmett, can you comment on that?
Yeah, the idea is that you the way I think about it is there's the Rolodex thing. Everyone has their own Rolodex and they know who they talk to. But how do you find new people to talk to? And for that, you need like a phone book, or you need web search or something like that. So the idea we're looking at is how do you figure out what the person really wants, and then you have to have some sort of a specification for a repository that people would register. I mean, think of it, it doesn't have to be exactly like, but think of it like web. You register your page, or it's crawled by Google, and they make a lookup that finds things by probably keywords or however, smart stuff. I mean, the discovery I did used a large language model to decide what domain you were looking for. And then that's a good start. And then you could go in there and provide, different assistants, and maybe it has to pick them on what language you're speaking, or maybe what level of expertise you have that's already in your profile that your original platform knows. So that's a complicated question. I agree. It's very rich and deep, and I'm sure we will not answer it next week. It'll be a growing process.
And here's a related question from Phil Shin, a great question. Will the project sponsor a discovery function?
We will probably explore methods by which we think it could be done. I don't think we're going to be hosting any sort of, DNS or a web search like Google. Somebody should, though.
It's certainly something we're working toward.
Yeah, well, we're working toward how to do it, and maybe pique someone's interest to say, hey, I can make some money making one of these things. That's I think, my goal.
Nathan, I think we have a couple more things to wrap up, so this might be a good time to close down the questions, and we'll be sure to answer the questions offline. But let's go to the next slide. We have some next steps. Actually, we have some resources. All of these resources, all of these links, you don't have to copy them down. They're all in our GitHub. There's a resources page in our GitHub. There's a introduction to the whole overall interoperability initiative, the LFAI Data Foundation itself. And our GitHub is called Open Voice Interoperability. That's where you'll find the sandbox and all of the information, specifications, all the information about our activities. The code, and we have a Discord server that we can host discussions on that too. And then one more set of resources are, well, before that, yeah, just and this also is on our GitHub. The 3 previous webinars that in this case they all introduced our standards. This is the first one today that we are actually introducing our code. Next slide. So, as I said, if you have any questions for us, we'll be sure to respond to those offline in our GitHub discussions forum. And any future questions can be posed in GitHub or with the Discord server. And we'd also like to invite everyone to join us. Please try out the sandbox. Give us your comments, questions. And if you're really interested in the details, come and help us work on specifications. So with that, last slide. I'd like to thank everybody for your attention and interest, and I hope to see you on our next webinar, which will be in a few weeks. Thanks, everybody.